At the level of implementation, of course, the president then drives the executive.
And you've also talked about seeing this progress going into before 2022. Institutionally, what exactly does that mean? Institutionally, I mean through the Building Bridges initiative, there's going to be a report, and from that report, the recommendations will be turned into constitutional questions, which will lead to a referendum. Now, those institutional changes, be it at the electoral level, be it in terms of bringing more inclusivity, be it structure of the executive, I think at the level of institutional reform and change will come once this report is out, and we are now at the level of campaigning. And which institutions do you believe? I think one is the structure of the executive. We have realized that the executive, unless it is well structured, the same imperial presidency and exclusivity in the managing of public affairs persists. So you need some form of government that encourages inclusivity. I know that when we talk about this, a lot of people are thinking that we want to create offices. Inclusivity can come about depending on what formation, or rather the structure of the executive that is established. Like in South Africa, you have a parliamentary system with a president, or you may even have an executive president who rules through parliament, and therefore the system is essentially parliamentary. Right. So to that extent, you are likely to bring on board many other political formations into government or involve in decision-making through a parliamentary process. And we'll talk in detail about that when we talk about possible constitution review. So you've talked about possible changes to the structure of the executive. Any other institution you see that would, a BBI process would recommend reform to? IBC, perhaps? Yeah, IBC. I think we have not managed our elections very well. I think the appointment of the electoral body, I think we still need to think about it seriously. But the best, I would imagine, and this has been proposed at one time practice during the Moi era, when you had commissioners nominated by political parties. Right. And it is curious that you speak with such authority on what you expect BBI to present, proposals that will be converted into questions for a referendum. While the rest of the country is waiting to see that document, how is it that you can be so authoritative on the matter? Well, if you read the document that President Uhuru Kenyatta and Raila Amolo Odinga signed, on the 9 issues, they all revolve around some of the things I've talked about. But it's not given that that is what Kenyans would have said in response. It is not given, but I think it was somewhere in the recommendations. But I agree with you at the end, the public may not necessarily agree with what comes out in the report. And if they don't agree during that phase of report and formulation of the questions, the public can have their own input. Like the governors now have come out with an input that I think is going to be fed into the Building Bridges initiative. I put it to you that you have known all along what exactly BBI will come out with, and what it was intended to come out with is this predetermined outcome that the Deputy President and his allies have been talking about, one whose sole purpose is to ensure that power is shared between President Uhuru Kenyatta, who would then run government, and the former Prime Minister, who would assume other responsibilities. Wrong. If it was predetermined, then going around the country receiving views and then reporting back to the country and then having a national conversation about the report, that would have been absolutely unnecessary. And I think... But it was for sure. That's what they're saying. No. I mean, for example, with the momentum and the goodwill that existed more than a year ago, they could have driven the question of the referendum right out of the outset. But they saw what had happened before. I mean, you remember during the Kibaki government, or the first NAC government, when the Kilifi draft was rushed to the country said no.
And I think both President Kenyatta and Raila were quite conscious that, you may have an idea that may be appealing, but may not necessarily be appealing to the public.
But you're so confident on this referendum proposal. Have you read the report? I dare ask, are you writing it?
Yeah, I'm not
Is it originating from your office?
I am not writing it. I've not seen it. I'm just waiting like
Is this another prophecy like the one we played at
no,
the beginning
no,
of the program?
it's not another prophecy. But I can say with substantial confidence that the questions that I'm talking about, if they are not addressed in that report and does not lead to a referendum, we'll be back to square one. We have tried to bring about reform in circles, and every time I don't think we have really succeeded.
In 2017, you denied Jubilee's claims that NASA was planning to have a referendum to create positions for its principals. You said, quote, Jubilee is now running short of ideas. They are working on propaganda. I don't know where the idea of a referendum is coming from. And now you're saying that a referendum is the only answer.
Yeah, but we remember as NASA, we had come out with the Core Kenya initiative, I think as CORD, because at that time...
That's CORD, right?
Yeah, we had come out with the Core Kenya initiative. We tried to drive it through, but you know what happened in IBC to deny us that 1 million number of voters,
How come Ekuro Okot could pull it off?
I could ask you the same question. Somebody without any structures, any resources, not a strong party, a party which could not even win a single seat during the last elections.
I put it to you, you're a sore loser, Mr. Orengo, that we saw the signatures that came out. Some of it was pretty much, just dwiddling with a pen, that the party was overconfident, didn't do its homework, and didn't collect the signatures to begin with.
We're not sore losers. When we lose, we accept it. And those who have lost elections have turned out on top. Churchill lost elections.
Which election have you lost and
Lincoln
accepted?
lost elections. I have lost elections as a member of parliament.
As ODM?
In 1997, Raila lost presidential elections. And at that time, he didn't go into the streets. He tried to bring, Kibaki and everybody in the opposition together to change the electoral laws.
I want to return to the handshake, and it appears that the only substantial thing that the handshake has definitively changed is ODM itself, that it has turned out to become an apologist for a government that it believed should have been censured right at the very top, with even calls for impeachment from yourself.
Well, there are a lot of things which are happening which we don't agree with. But we think there's a greater good achieved if we can change the way we govern ourselves. If I begin to talk about the litany of the things that I think are going wrong,
tell us some in brief.
There are many.
What do you think the government's still doing wrong?
Yeah, for example, the level of borrowing is too high. And we have come to believe in deficit financing. That can be extremely dangerous. Kibaki used to talk about two things, borrowing and expenditure. You got to watch out what type of expenditure you're making.
Yet Raila Odinga accompanied President Kenyatta to China and seeking the second loan. Yes,
well, there's a kind of borrowing, that can lead into major development and job creation. But I think somewhere along the way, this government does not structure its borrowing in a way that you can see immediate returns. Like, for example, I think if Kibaki and Raila were still in that government, the Grand Coalition government, SGR would have been completed at a cheaper rate and probably would have gotten a better deal than we have at the moment.
You said that there are things that you still have issue with, and you've talked about loans, and I've challenged you on that and said that, your party leader went ahead on another loan quest. And I earlier asked you whether the master stroke in this was the killing of an effective opposition. I put it to you that you proved my point, because whereas you have these grievances, we don't hear about them. You're quiet about them now.
We are quiet because we want to create an environment that can bring about these changes that we think are going to enable us to address the problems that we face. For example, one of the ways that Kibaki and Raila dealt with corruption is by closing loopholes. You don't wait for people to steal money and then you drag them into courts. You know, you're just making it possible for these cartels to make corruption, you know, I mean, they will do it in a bigger way because they know the risks are higher. But I think if you go to Singapore and Taiwan and those places with like quoting, is that those loopholes must be closed. And I think that approach in government is still non-existent.
Your silence is more likely to allow the administration to